Let's talk some more about the mover of the week. Of course, that's BTC Bitcoin. Joining us is the CEO of ErisX, a crypto exchange. Tom Chippas is back here on the program. Tom, it's great to have you on the show. I want to first get your thoughts just on the big question, of course, that everyone's looking at as we break out below or break out above the 2017 highs. Is this opening the door to the next big crypto wave we've heard about post-halving and all this stuff? Or are we bound for disappointment again in this heartbreaker?
Well, we're going to find out. I think what's really interesting now is the story today is so much different than it was, a week ago, much less a year ago. Certainly, we see much broader participation in the market today. This is not at all like the rallies we've seen in the past that were so definitively retail-led. So I think higher highs are certainly possible.
So, Tom, what's the strongest evidence here? I know I've seen a lot of institutional type of investors talk about BTC. We've seen some of the moves by large insurance players and others and the MicroStrategy type stuff where folks take a stake in it. What do you see on your platform? What do you see on the exchange side? Is it big size? Is it big blocks? Is it stuff that mom and pops can't do?
I think it's all matter. The retail participants are still there, but we're definitely seeing, especially in a day like today, larger prints going off in the market. And that's a function, I think, of either the market's moving quickly and people want to establish or exit a position, but it's also likely a function of these institutional players coming in. And whether you're a large insurance company, as you referenced, or an asset manager, you want to move and enter your position and hopefully not push the market around. But the fact of the matter is, you probably have a bit of capital you have to deploy. And if you want to get in and show your customer that you've established a position for them, then you got to get in. And you can't just trickle it out for months and months and months. I think some of the early public movers like MicroStrategy and others had the luxury of time. Other people now probably are feeling a little bit of pressure to chase, and maybe that's why we could see some larger orders pushing the price around a bit more.
Tom, so the players are different here, but is the game changed at all? Or is this all just speculation? Are big money guys now playing because the NASDAQ didn't go anywhere for 3 months, because Apple's off the highs, because the reliable trades hadn't been working? Are they just going to BTC because they run out of ideas? I mean, if they're not doing it because they're going to hold it and they're hodlers and believers that this thing can go to 200, 300,000, does any of it matter? Who's in charge? Is it just a player with the bigger chip stack and now a bigger pot with the same bubbly behavior?
No, I'm going to be an optimist and say it's because a lot of these folks have finally come to realization of what something like Bitcoin means or something like Ether means. We were talking about Bitcoin, and today, the story of a store value with greater utility than gold, easier to move around, easier to manage in a world where we have virtually unlimited QE driven by modern monetary theory. I think it's the value that people see in a model like Bitcoin is finally resonating with them. We've reached market conditions that at this point have left them with few alternatives. And I think that's a slightly different way to come to this position than perhaps to say, I got nothing else left, so I'm just gonna throw some chips on the table and see where they land.
What then do they want from BTC? Because it sure generally trades like risk. I mean, we've got, if you just kind of step back at the end of the day, we're at NASDAQ highs trying to break out just as Bitcoin's trying to really break out. The overall unison between the two hasn't changed a whole lot. There have been fits and starts, and here on the show, I was pretty impressed that Bitcoin broke out during the fall when the NASDAQ was filling around. It seemed to be a lot more responsive to stimulus than stocks. I think if that continues, that's a big deal. But do we need it to continue? Do we need to see hard evidence? I mean, what's better than Bitcoin right now than like a stock market that gets slammed and Bitcoin goes up? Is that something that could happen? Is that something that needs to happen to confirm the narrative of Bitcoin as something else than a gamble?
I don't think anything needs to happen. Bitcoin doesn't look outside for validation. You can't get the CEO of Bitcoin on to talk about the attributes of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin doesn't need to be externally validated. And I think when you think about risk for a moment, I ran some quick numbers before coming on here. There are plenty of stocks with volatilities higher or close to Bitcoin. If Tesla's at about a 90, Bitcoin's at about a 76. So I mean, people are trading far more volatile shares out there today, and to compare it to Bitcoin, I don't know is necessarily the right comparison, but
Sure.
if you are looking at metrics such as volatility, Bitcoin's superior to some of those names. But I think the continued economic conditions that are driving people to search for yield or protect the value of what they have, they're trying to find that asset to put it in. And if you're getting some excess return right now, well, that's probably all the better. But I think the themes driving people into it are varied. I wouldn't at all characterize this as one theme, one idea, one herd.
Okay. Hey, Tom, let's continue the conversation. We got to jump for now. We got to close the bell coming up here. Thank you, Tom. Chippas, CEO at ErisX. Good stuff. BTC and the buyers getting bigger as institutional players through Tom's exchange seem to be making some noise.